Welcome to Love Lies Chronicles.
I'd really appreciate your comment. It helps me understand if you enjoyed the story and how I can improve in future ones. I'm Daniel Cross, 40, logistics manager for a regional shipping company in Dallas. Saturday night. Patio lights strung across our courtyard like a low ceiling of warm stars. The smell of mesquite and marinade. Condensation sliding down bottles onto the folding table my neighbor keeps for game days. It was one of those neighborhood cookouts where everyone brings something and no one leaves early. I'd finished flipping the steak tips and set the tongs on a paper plate when the moment arrived. The kind you never plan for and can never unhear once it's spoken. The week leading up to it had been loud in quiet ways. She'd been colder, not in a dramatic, plate-throwing sense, just missing. Touches avoided. Eyes skimming past mine. My questions about her day met with one-word answers while her thumbs moved faster for strangers on her screen. A new password I wasn't told about. More nights out with the girls, who apparently had an endless list of birthdays to toast and crises to process. I told myself to let it pass. Work was heavy. End-of-quarter pushes always are. Maybe I was projecting the fatigue onto her. Maybe I was reading too much into silence. Our friends didn't notice or pretended not to. Music from a portable speaker. A kid weaving through legs with a water gun. Somebody arguing about college football like the outcome depended on his opinion. I did my host duties, refilling the cooler, asking the right polite questions, placing the jalapeno poppers on the platter like I was arranging chess pieces. She stood with two of her friends near the fence, laughing at something I couldn't hear, the kind of laugh you use when you want people to know you're fine. When I brought the steak tips over, conversation shifted without me. A neighbor joked about couples who pretend to be perfect on social media. Another chimed in with a story about a coworker who posts love quotes and then brags about sleeping in separate bedrooms. It was a throwaway topic, paper light, just air moving. Then she turned, lifted her glass as if to make a toast, and cut straight through the noise. Quit pretending we're married. I'll do what I want. It landed with a clink the music couldn't cover. For a second, the courtyard had an echo, like the words bounced off the fence and came back twice as loud. I looked at her, not with surprise but with a quiet acknowledgement, the way a man looks at a weather radar and understands the storm isn't passing. A few people laughed, nervous, grateful for anything that could be mistaken for a joke. Someone said, savage, the way people do when they want to be on the side of the loudest line. I smiled. Not because it was funny, because a smile is a clean way to say I heard you without turning it into a scene. Inside, the smile felt like setting a glass gently on a counter so it won't crack. I didn't look around for allies. Logistics teaches you not to panic when a scheduled delivery fails. You reroute, you note the time, you don't shout at the truck. My job is to adjust when something that should arrive on Tuesday arrives on Friday or not at all. I treat people like schedules too often. That's on me. But in that moment, I realized she had canceled something without warning and expected me to keep smiling on the loading dock. She held my eyes just long enough to make it clear it wasn't a joke, then turned back to her friends, who huddled closer like she'd earned a stripe. I took the tongs, served portions, kept my voice level. Who wants medium? Who wants more char? The ordinary movements anchored me. When somebody asked about the new warehouse lease, I answered with dates and square footage like nothing had shifted. You can do a lot of nothing while an earthquake settles. A man notices small things when he doesn't want to notice the big thing. The way her hand stayed anchored to her phone even while she held a drink. The way the neighbor's wife glanced at me and then away, like she'd overheard something she wished she hadn't. The way our dog, usually glued to her legs at parties, kept circling back to me, head pressed into my knee like he was checking for a pulse. I rinsed the cutting board in the kitchen, letting the water run longer than necessary. Through the window over the sink, I could still see them under the string lights, still hear the swell of party talk like a tide. I thought about the last time she'd touched my shoulder without a reason attached. I thought about the little drawer where she used to leave notes, grocery lists with hearts, messages like pickup lines for tacos, and also don't forget you're my favorite person. The drawer held batteries and takeout menus now. It's a small thing, a drawer turning practical, but most endings announce themselves in utility. When I stepped back onto the patio, people had decided it had been a joke after all, because a joke is easier to digest with steak. She kept her distance. I moved tools to the garage, wiped a spilled drink from the deck boards, said goodbye to the couple who always leaves early because their babysitter charges time and a half after 10. A neighbor slapped my shoulder with a grin big enough for both of us. "You two are hilarious," he said, already halfway to another conversation. I smiled again. There's a way to hold your face so the night can end without anyone feeling burdened. After the last folding chair was leaned against the fence and the cooler dragged just inside the door so raccoons wouldn't stage a raid, the house settled into that post-party quiet. A tired, sticky silence with the sugar of barbecue still hanging in the air. She moved through the kitchen collecting her things like she was shopping on Fast Forward. Phone, lipstick, charger. I asked if she needed any help carrying stuff out to her car. A practical question, nothing more. She didn't answer. The front door closed a minute later. I did the dishes, one sinkful at a time. There's a rhythm to soap and rinse that makes a mind useful. Plate, knife, glass, repeat. The window over the sink had a smear where a kid's hand had rested to look at the dog. I wiped it with the dish towel and watched the reflection of the patio lights gutter out as the timer cut power. The backyard went dark and true. At some point I checked my phone. No, I was kidding. No apology. The absence didn't hurt the way I expected. It clarified. If a truck misses its dock time enough nights in a row, you stop leaving the door open. I tossed the last trash bag into the bin and stood there with my hands on the rim, listening for the click of her car coming back. The street was quiet. A moth battered itself against the porch light and finally found nothing worth circling. I turned the light off. The moth disappeared into dark it already knew how to handle. I took a slow lap through the living room like a security guard on graveyard shift. Plates stacked, counters wiped, Bluetooth speaker on the charger, the tongs back in their drawer. Order restored where it could be. I wasn't looking for peace, just proof that the world still obeyed small rules. The big rules I'd revisit in the morning. In bed, the ceiling fan cut soft circles above me. The house clicked and settled the way old houses do. Somewhere down the block a car door thumped, laughter spilled, then faded. I stared at the faint, clean line where our blackout curtains don't quite meet and thought about the line she had drawn in public. Not just the words, but the choice to perform them. The laughter around the table had been real. My smile had been real, too, in its own way. It was the smile of a man who finally accepts the weather report. Something was off. Not just with us, but with me. With the way I had allowed small dismissals to become the regular price of admission. I wasn't angry. What I felt was slower, like concrete setting. Calm, factual, a little stunned. I had not decided anything. But the part of me that keeps timetables and builds routes had already pulled a pin from behind its ear and drawn a clean box around tonight's date. The morning after the cookout, the house smelled like cold charcoal and dish soap. I brewed coffee, opened the back door to let the dog nose the air, and told myself last night didn't mean what it sounded like. Then my phone buzzed. She'd posted a photo at sunrise, her sneakers on a trail, a caption that read, "Choosing freedom over optics." Public. Comments already rolling in. Little hands clap emojis from friends who like to applaud anything that sounds like liberation, no matter who it cuts. I set the mug down. Logistics teaches you to read signals before trucks miss their windows. That caption wasn't a flare. It was a route announcement. The day followed suit. She took her laptop to a cafe to think without noise, then sent me a text at 11 p.m. that she might crash at Jen's. I replied with a thumbs up. 2 more nights like that. Different excuses, same outcome. She came home smelling like a dozen places at once. Perfume, fryer oil, other people's cigarettes. When she was home, she lived on her phone. Reels about boundaries. Quotes from accounts that sell empowerment like vitamins. I don't knock self-help. I knock the version that needs an audience and a villain. I recognized the role I was being assigned. By midweek, her mother called. Speakerphone, because privacy apparently also needed witnesses. I set my laptop aside and listened while they discussed my temperament like whether no one can dress for. Her mother has never liked that I don't perform money. I stack it, plan it, make it show up on time. You married beneath your potential, she said, a little too clear for a bad connection. My wife didn't disagree. At dinner with friends on Thursday, the test went public without the alcohol to blame. Someone asked about the new warehouse, and I started to explain the routing software upgrade, how shaving 8 minutes from each leg scales into weeks saved by quarter's end. She cut in, light voice, big smile. He makes spreadsheets for a living. It's cute. Laughter again, polite and quick. I stuck to the point about minutes scaling into weeks. Nobody asked to follow up. I took a sip of water and let the condensation wet my fingers until my hand felt cooled into steadiness. The small cuts multiplied. An Instagram story of her clinking glasses under a caption that read, "No more permission slips." A pointed joke at brunch about married men who need check-ins. A group text I wasn't supposed to see, except a mutual friend accidentally added me, where she wrote, "He's so predictable the dog could set his watch by him." The friend realized the mistake and removed me from the thread. I stopped asking when she'd be home and started subtracting my availability from the equation. If she needed a ride, she ordered one. If she wanted to borrow my time, she learned my calendar doesn't extend to people who don't speak to me with respect. Friday night, we were supposed to have dinner with her sister. She arrived an hour late, slid into the booth, and announced to the table, "He gets moody when I breathe wrong." The waitress looked at me like I should joke back to keep the table light. I asked for water and the salmon. The waitress blinked, wrote, moved on. My wife rolled her eyes so hard she could have sprained something, and then spent 10 minutes posting to her story about holding space for myself despite pressure. I held space for the salmon. The next morning, her cousin DM'd me a paragraph about how women deserve joy and men fear losing control. I don't know her cousin. I read it twice because it was coordinated. Messages like that don't appear unless they're invited. I typed nothing in return. Some hooks rust if you don't bite. At home, she performed indifference with precision, humming around the kitchen island, AirPods in, dancing to songs that never made it past our shared speakers before. She'd ask if I could run to the store for something she forgot, then make a face when I said I was busy. Busy how? Work. She laughed. Boxes don't flirt back, Daniel. I didn't tell her my work isn't boxes. It's promises arriving where they're supposed to. Neighbors started noticing without admitting it. Jenna from across the courtyard gave me a nod one evening in the parking lot. The kind you offer when you can't fix anything and you won't pretend either. I nodded back. We didn't discuss anything. I carried groceries. She carried a toolbox from her trunk like it wasn't heavy. Useful people recognize their own kind in the mirror. Sunday night, she went live for 12 minutes. Not to a massive audience, but enough. She didn't say my name. She talked about women outgrowing men who need constant reassurance. She talked about finding herself like she'd been lost in a pantry and finally turned on the light. The comments were a rolling applause. Someone wrote, "Proud of you." Another wrote, "He'll adjust or he'll be out." I scrolled through the viewers. Her mother, 2 of her coworkers, a neighbor I'd helped move a couch once. I closed the app. Adjustments were already in motion. They were just not the ones the commenters imagined. We stopped moving around each other. We moved past. She slept on the outer edge of the bed, back turned, phone lighting the ceiling like a lighthouse for a ship that was already on land. I started waking earlier, letting the dog drag me outside for a loop around the block before sunrise. The sky at that hour is honest. It tells you the day is coming whether you asked for it or not. I'd return to make coffee. She'd come down later and ask if there was any left, like I'm a coffee shop and tipping is optional. I started leaving her mug clean on the rack, upright, ready for her to pour for herself. It wasn't a punishment. It was an invitation to meet the day the way adults do, standing up. She began removing her ring for the gym, then for lotion, then for no stated reason at all. It moved from finger to pocket to dish to nowhere. I noticed, then stopped noticing. You can't lose what's already been set down. The most obvious test came midweek. She sent me a link to a weekend trip with her friends, a spa package 2 hours away, and a message, "Going. Don't wait up for me all weekend." I replied, "Have a good time." She sent back a laughing emoji, the tilted one. Translation, "You were supposed to fight me for the privilege of being disrespected." I declined the invitation. I kept the house in order because order steadies the hand that will eventually point to a line and mean it. I cooked simple food and ate it. I folded laundry that belonged to me. I left hers in the basket, clean, unjudged. I made the bed on my side, tight corners, smooth sheet, a visual fact that at least half the things still functioned. Friends drifted through the week with small asks that tried to become big ones. Could I talk to her about her posts? Could I be less rigid, more fun, more something? I listened. I told each of them the same sentence, adjusted for tone. I'm calm because clarity is expensive and I'm paying cash. They didn't know what to do with that. By the end of the second week, the air in the house had a new temperature. She tossed a jacket over a chair and announced she might be gone a few nights. I looked at the chair, the jacket, the door. I nodded once. She waited for the old version of me, the one who would ask for details, make a case, fix a schedule. He didn't clock in. When she left, the door clicked with the soft finality of a good hinge. I stood in the hall listening to the seconds after the click. I could feel the road beneath the week's events, freshly paved and straight enough to see where it pointed. I didn't have the conversation yet, but the words were walking toward me, steady, on time. The house held the same thin air, but my breathing had changed. I brewed coffee, walked the dog, wiped the counters, then opened my calendar and created an event. Title, deadline. Time, 48 hours from now, to the minute. I added a reminder at 24. She came back late morning, sunglasses in her hair, the look of someone who'd already drafted a caption. I asked her to meet me in the living room. I stood by the coffee table, the one where she once left notes with hearts, and laid a single sheet of paper next to the remote. 2 lines. 2 boxes. You have 48 hours. Her smile sharpened, prepared for a tedious, controlling speech. I didn't give her one. 2 requirements. 1, an apology to me. 2, that apology must be delivered in front of the same people you performed for at the cookout. Same stage, same audience. You choose the time in that window, I'll provide the room. She laughed, a bright bell that used to mean joy and now meant distance. You're giving me homework. An agreement or a refusal. Those are the only 2 grades here. What if I don't feel like participating in your little theater? Then you'll get out of my house. Silence isn't always empty. Sometimes it's heavy enough to mark a floor. She watched me for the flinch that used to be there. It didn't show. I picked up the paper and handed it to her. The boxes were blank for her to check. Underneath, a time stamp. I'd printed it 10 minutes earlier. This is ridiculous. The sunglasses went back on though we were indoors. You can't control me. I'm not trying to control you. I am defining the conditions for being here. 48 hours. She walked to the kitchen, muttering something about men who need audiences for their egos. The irony didn't need framing. I went to my office, documented what I'd just said in an email to her, clear, precise, without heat, and BCC'd my own personal account. People remember events the way they wish they happened. Paper remembers the way it was. At work, I moved through meetings with the same steady voice I used to reroute trucks when an interstate shuts down for a wreck. While we discussed pallet counts and cross-dock timing, my watch buzzed with the 24-hour reminder. A second event appeared beneath it. Reserve courtyard if she accepts. I texted our neighbor who manages the HOA's shared space and asked about availability Monday and Tuesday evening. He replied with both slots open. I thanked him and didn't book either. At lunch, I received a notification. She'd posted a boomerang of clinking glasses with the caption, "Own your truth." Comments arrived like confetti. Someone wrote that a queen bows to no one. Another wrote that accountability is just a tool men use to keep women small. I finished my sandwich and replied to an email from a carrier who'd missed a morning window. New arrival estimate, new dock, new plan. The world keeps moving if you keep your hands where they do the most good. That evening, she floated around the kitchen, humming, performing calm. I printed a second copy of the paper and taped it to the fridge, not dramatic, bottom corner, where the grocery list used to hang. I set a timer on the stove for 47 hours and change, because clocks in rooms change the physics of behavior. You can ignore a man. A ticking second hand is harder to pretend away. Her mother called on speaker again. He's trying to humiliate you. A pause to let it land. A public apology? What kind of man needs that? The kind who was humiliated in public. I said to the room, not the phone. The call ended without a goodbye. That night, I slept on my side of the bed like a soldier bedding down in a temporary camp. Pack light, be ready. I woke before dawn, made coffee, and wrote 3 outcomes on a sticky note. A. She apologizes privately and publicly. We reset. B. She refuses. She leaves. C. She performs a halfway apology. We decline it and proceed to B. I stuck the note inside my planner. Choices simplify if you define them clearly. 24 hours. The reminder found me in the warehouse, checking a mis-shipped pallet count. I acknowledged it with a tap and told the foreman to re-tag the pallets bound for Lubbock. He raised an eyebrow, the way people do when they think you're too calm for your life. Calm is cheaper than panic. Panic bills interest. She texted me a photo of a brunch table, mimosas, a smile over the rim, a stray hand with a ring that had never left its owner. Caption: energy unmatched. I hearted the photo. You document everything when the shipment matters. After work, I messaged the couple who'd hosted the cookout. Thinking about gathering folks again tomorrow or Tuesday, casual, half an hour. Could I borrow the patio if the weather holds? They said yes to both nights, no questions. I added both to my calendar, marked tentative. If she checked the first box on the fridge, I'd convert one to confirmed. If she didn't, the calendar would go quiet. At home, she tested the edges. You really expect me to stand up in front of everyone and grovel? Not grovel. Tell the truth in the same place you told the performance. You're making a public spectacle of my growth. You made one of my marriage. Her jaw tightened, then relaxed into a smirk. You won't do it. You're too worried about what people think of you. What people think of me is not the standard anymore. We ate. 2 forks knocking softly against ceramic, the sound of restraint. She left her plate in the sink and went live again for 6 minutes about how she was done with transactional love. She used words she'd copied from someone who monetizes hurt. I let the dog out, rinsed my plate, wiped the counter, set the dish to dry. 12 hours. My watch buzzed. I set my phone on the nightstand screen down and slept the kind of sleep you get when the road is chosen and all that's left is to walk it. Morning brought quiet. She left early, perfume thick, the front door shutting with an announcement that she wanted to be heard without saying anything. I cleared the dining table, set 2 glasses of water on coasters, wrote the apology sentence on an index card because some people can only do hard things if the first word is already on the page. The card read, "What I said at the cookout was disrespectful to my husband and to marriage." I put a second card under it that read, "I'm sorry." 2 words. Heavy enough. 1 hour. The last reminder landed like a soft tap on the wrist. I texted the couple, "We're good to hold off." I sat on the couch with my planner open to the sticky note. A, B, C. I remembered the sound of laughter over steak tips and the way I'd smiled to keep the night moving. There would be no smile tonight. Only the clarity I'd promised myself. The timer on the stove ticked the last 5 minutes into the room, and the house felt level for the first time in a long time, like someone had corrected the foundation while we slept. 48 hours came due, as all invoices do. The second hand crossed the mark. The clock didn't boom or flash. It just arrived. I stood, took the paper from the fridge, and checked the boxes myself. The room stayed the same temperature. A policy is a kindness once you stop pretending it's a threat. She walked in 5 minutes late, the smell of a bar that thinks it's a church clinging to her clothes. She saw the empty glasses and the index card and rolled her eyes like a teenager offered a chore chart. "Time," I said, not loud. The windows closed. Her laugh tried to float. It didn't. The words I'd promised were already in the air between us, arranged, measured, waiting for the next part to join them. The clock ran out on a Tuesday at 7:03 p.m., 48 hours exactly since I'd laid out the terms. I was rinsing a coffee cup when the stairwell echoed with the wheels of a suitcase. Then a thud, her bag clipping the jamb of a door that wouldn't open for her anymore. I didn't rush. I let the lock do the talking. Through the peephole, I saw confidence slide off her face like rain off glass, replaced by the frantic shuffle of someone who finally realized a line had been crossed and stayed crossed. She knocked hard. I let it land, then answered through the door, calm, level, the same tone I used when a subcontractor tried to upcharge me mid-project. The window closed. You declined the apology in the same room, same friends. You didn't fix what you broke. You've got 30 minutes to pack what you can carry. The rest goes to the curb in a week. Her mouth opened, closed. She tried on a few expressions: hurt, outrage, a soft smile she used to sell me on weekend plans that only benefited her. None of them fit. The first tactic was guilt. "You're humiliating me," she said, glancing down the hall as if a jury hid in the stairwell. I kept my voice even. "You humiliated us when you announced our marriage as optional in front of an audience. My boundary isn't revenge. It's gravity. You don't negotiate with gravity. You work around it." She leaned her forehead to the door, whispering the smaller words, "Please, don't do this. We can talk," like a last-minute coupon. I repeated the terms once and stepped away. Inside, I set a timer on my phone. Outside, the suitcase wheels started again. Then came theater. Her friends, two from that dinner, arrived fast, powered by group chat courage. They clustered near the doormat, presenting concern like a credential. One asked to speak civilly. I slid an envelope under the door, printed screenshots of my original ultimatum with the timestamp, and her reply chain full of posts, captions, and a video where she reenacted my controlling lecture for likes. No commentary, just receipts. Their faces changed by degrees. One couldn't meet the peephole. Another mumbled that maybe it's better to take a breather. The one who laughed loudest at the restaurant slipped a hand over her mouth, as if the Ring camera above their heads had a microphone for conscience. When performance meets evidence, most productions get canceled mid-act. She pivoted to seduction next. A softer knock, a curated tone. Perfume you don't wear for apologies. I didn't answer. I texted, concise, 30 minutes. Need boxes? They're on the landing. My neighbor across the hall stepped out at that point, not to interfere, just to make sure nobody turned the hallway into a stage. She set 2 folded banker's boxes by the suitcase and nodded once to me, once to my wife, like a referee for grown-ups. No wink, just order. The simple presence of someone who'd watched this play from the first scene took the helium out of everyone's lines. Social media tried to escalate what reality was flattening. While the timer ticked, my phone lit up with screenshots forwarded from mutuals. Her locked out by my abuser post, a shaky story where she posed next to our door as if it were a villain. I didn't engage. I unfollowed, then messaged exactly 4 people who mattered, her parents and 2 friends who'd shown me basic decency, to say I'd be unavailable for back and forth, but here were the facts and the timeline. I attached the same screenshots I slid under the door. No adjectives. Facts don't need them. Her mother called. I let it go to voicemail. When people want you to disregard your terms, they dial. When they understand your terms, they write. She tried anger when sweetness failed. Accusations shot through the wood like BBs, controlling, ruthless. The words didn't land, they scattered. Somewhere in there, she said she was calling her brother. I told her through the door he was welcome to help carry boxes and that the building camera covered the hall, so everyone's behavior would be recorded. Rage withers under lighting. She switched back to sadness. The timer app glowed on my counter like a quiet metronome. I thought of how many nights I'd lost pacing between hope and confusion. No more. At 29 minutes I opened the door, stepped into the hall, and held it with my shoulder. Not an inch inside. She'd built a mountain of things that made her feel entitled to me. Shared history, 1,000 small favors. All the times I let disrespect slide because I didn't want a scene. I kept my hands at my sides and spoke like a project manager closing a change order. Time. Take what you can carry. She moved with theatrical slowness, touching objects like they were more symbolic than useful. My neighbor set a box on its side and said she had tape if needed. It's funny how much dignity lives in the word needed. Not wanted. Needed. The difference ends a lot of arguments. The online flames burned down faster than she expected. People who know you offline recognize shape and weight. The neighbor posted one simple line in the building group. Please refrain from speculation. I witnessed him state clear terms 2 days ago. I witnessed them ignored. Respect the process. That was all. Not a character witness, just a local fact. It anchored the narrative the way a good foundation stops a house from tilting toward the loudest wind. Some of her followers quietly deleted comments. One messaged me privately. Didn't know the whole story. That's on me. I didn't reply. Forgiveness isn't a responsibility. It's a choice. Today I chose silence. She made one last push before the half hour ended, stood between me and the door with a pleading speech about memories and investments and how breaking up over one bad night was crazy. It wasn't one night. It was a pattern organized around contempt. There's a difference between making a mistake and making a statement. I stepped past her without contact, opened the door, and held it wide. She read the gesture correctly and took the handle of her suitcase like it was heavier than it had been 30 minutes ago. Her friends followed with boxes. The hallway felt oddly spacious once they were gone. The next days looked nothing like drama and everything like maintenance. I changed the keypad code, removed her from the utilities, documented the contents she hadn't claimed, stacked them neatly in the storage cage with a printed pickup date taped to the front. When her aunt called to hear my side, I declined and texted the summary instead. When a mutual tried to graft their own breakup onto mine and offer strategy, I said thanks and passed. I went to work. I worked out. I slept. Not deep at first, but without the hard startle of a man waiting for another shoe to drop. I had all the shoes. I'd set them by the door and handed them back. The apologies started coming, as they always do, first from the fringes, then from the center. A friend sent a voice memo that said, "I laughed that night because it felt safer than saying I was uncomfortable with what she said." Her sister wrote, "I told her to apologize when you gave her the chance. I'm sorry she didn't." Even her boss reached out, not for gossip, but to ask if her personal life would spill into a client event. I gave the only answer I owed. It won't spill into my house. What she does elsewhere is her business. Boundaries are clean sentences. People remember them. And her? She cycled through the stages behind 100 passwords, blocked me, unblocked me, sent a 3-page text at 1:14 a.m. about how I'd abandoned the work of marriage, then deleted it before I saw it, and resent a shorter one that said, "We need to talk." We didn't. There was nothing left to negotiate. She had a clear path back in the form of accountability, and she declined it. Consequences aren't weapons, they're mirrors. What she saw in this one wasn't flattering, so she tried to fog the glass. When the hallway finally went still, I stood inside my front door with the lock clicking home beneath my fingers, and I understood the difference between being unreachable and being gone. I wasn't hiding. I was simply out of range of manipulation. People started seeing her clearly because I refused to keep fogging the glass for them. It was air. Clean, ordinary air moving through rooms that had been closed too long. The house settled into a different kind of quiet after she left. Not the anxious, tiptoe quiet I'd lived in for months, waiting for her mood to decide the weather inside the walls. This was structural. The kind of quiet that lets you hear the refrigerator hum and your own breath and know neither is at war with you. I walked room to room and put things back where they belonged. Her half-empty perfume bottles in a banker's box, labeled and dated. The spare key she used to hide in the planter dropped into a sealed envelope for the attorney. The guest towels folded crisp and clean because I like crisp and clean. Small, dumb choices that say more than speeches ever do. I didn't post anything. The people who mattered already knew because they'd seen enough. By noon, the second wave hit. Her messages. "I didn't mean it like that. You made me feel boxed in. We can talk tonight." The clock answered for me. 48 hours had come and gone. I let the messages stack into a neat little column of what-ifs and circular logic. Boundaries aren't threats when you keep them, they're maps. I'd drawn mine with a thick marker. She was reading it like a suggestion. Her friends tried the back door. One of them called to clear the air. Another sent a paragraph about how everybody says dumb things at parties and how my public stance was too harsh. I agreed about the dumb things. I disagreed about public. She'd chosen the stage and the audience. All I did was turn off the mic and point to the exit. I said as much, in one sentence, without heat. The group chat that had laughed at me on Saturday night went quiet. Leave a room respectfully, and the echoes get honest. The neighbor caught me hauling the last box to the garage. She nodded at the stack like it was a decision made of cardboard. I thanked her for being decent when decency got scarce. She shrugged in that practical way that says people are capable of more kindness than they think if someone goes first. No winks. Just two adults on a shared landing acknowledging a line that had been crossed and redrawn. That evening, her mother called. Different tone. Less defense, more years. She wanted to understand how it had gotten here. I kept it simple. Disrespect isn't a mood, it's a pattern. I asked for an apology where the harm was done. She chose the audience once. She could choose it again. Silence on the line. Then a sigh that sounded like recognition. Sometimes the people who raised us see our worst parts and love us anyway. Sometimes they see those parts and say, "Fix it." Either way, it wasn't my weight to carry anymore. Day 2 after the exit, my attorney sent the checklist. Locks and codes already changed. Mail forwarded. Joint accounts frozen to review recurring payments. A formal letter confirming the 30-minute packout and the 1-week curb date for anything left behind. No malice, just process. When you strip the drama away, consequences read like instructions. She tried one more angle, nostalgia. Photos from early trips, captions about us, a question about whether I'd still make pancakes on Sundays. I didn't answer because pancakes aren't the point. Respect is. You can't garnish your way out of an empty plate. The apology never came. Not the kind that acknowledges specific damage where it happened. There was a half measure offered in private that suggested I was rigid, that forgiveness should be spontaneous. I was interested in alignment. The terms stayed the same. 48 hours. Same room. Same friends. Same spine. A week later, right on schedule, I rolled the last unclaimed box to the curb. A neighbor took 2 lamps. Someone else grabbed an ottoman. I felt responsible. I'd waited. I'd followed through. She pulled up as the sanitation truck turned the corner. The look on her face was the moment a person realizes the world did not, in fact, bend. She started toward me with words I'd already read on a screen. Word got around, as it does, because people were there when she told it first. At the next cookout I attended, the laughter wasn't aimed at me. The same men who'd watched me swallow a humiliation watched me eat in peace. A couple of the women who'd laughed messaged later and said they didn't like how that moment went down but didn't know how to interrupt it. It doesn't undo anything, but it's honest. I'll take honest. My life simplified. Gym before sunrise, because the barbell doesn't care about your narrative. Projects at work that had been waiting for my full attention got it. I changed my emergency contact. I updated the beneficiary line I'd been putting off. I sent a calendar invite to myself every first of the month. Audit your boundaries. She moved to a short-term rental across town. A friend mentioned, the careful kind of mention, that she's quieter now, less sure of her chorus. I hope she figures out whatever she went looking for. I mean that. You don't have to hate someone to stop letting them hurt you. You can wish them clarity from very far away. There's a version of this story where I walk back in when she finally says sorry. That version requires me to forget the public line she drew, the private escalation after the ultimatum, the way apology became theater when accountability was required. I'm not that version anymore. The door she told me to pretend didn't matter is closed. Not slammed. Closed. I built a lock that works from my side. A month out, I met the same friends from that night at a birthday dinner. I wore the same watch I had on when the sentence landed that started this whole thing. As a reminder that time keeps doing what it does whether you're brave or not. Someone made a tight joke and then stopped themselves. I smiled and asked them about their kids, their work, the home repairs they kept putting off. The conversation eased. People can learn. I did. I'm not rewriting history. There were good years. There were soft mornings and jokes only 2 people understood. But the final ledger is simple. You can't build a future on a floor that won't hold your weight. You shore it up or you move. I moved. The bed feels bigger now, because I'm not sharing it with the noise of whether I'm enough. I am, and that's not up for debate. The neighbor's door across the landing stays closed most nights. On Sundays, we pass on the stairs and trade small talk about packages and weather. Maybe it becomes more one day. Either way, I'm not measuring my life by who laughs, or who claps, or who comes crawling back. I measure it by what I refuse to negotiate. Respect isn't a bargaining chip. It's the table. If you won't sit at it, you don't eat here.
Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments, and do not forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel.